Ask any newcomer to wilderness camping what he or she fears most about the outdoors. You'll probably hear bugs, bears, and bad weather. Battling bugs is mostly a matter of doping up, covering up, and hardening your attitude. Bears, on the other hand, are usually more smoke than fire. But storms, wind-driven rain, these are components of every wilderness experience, from Florida to the high Arctic. If you can rig a dry camp and make a cheery fire in any weather, you'll survive. No, you'll thrive, and you'll be a big hero to your friends. Admittedly, some of the techniques you've seen in this video clash with accepted ways. Good. Old ideas, bad old ideas, die hard. Remember that when your camping friends question your new ways. The bottom line is that these methods work everywhere, anywhere, every time. I guarantee it.
Welcome to this episode of Cliff's Corner. In this episode, Cliff will be giving us tips again on how to select a tent that is properly outfitted.
We have the whole side of the tent pretty well taken care of. What about the front? The trouble with any high wall tent is in a frontal wind or quartering wind, the tent's blow down because it's so high and the poles tend to break right in the center. Now this is even more true now than it was 20 or 30 years ago when tents were much heavier and the poles were much thicker and more substantial than they are now. If you want to cut weight in a tent, you're not going to cut it by reducing fabric. You're going to cut it by making the poles lighter, thinner, and by using fewer stakes. So you want a tent that has as few stakes as possible and as thin, light poles as possible. The problem is these poles will tend to break right in the center. How can we stabilize these poles? Well, let's go back to the other side of the tent. In order to stabilize this pole, I'm going to split the difference between the poles and I'm going to sew on a storm loop. But the problem is, if I pull on that storm loop, I'm pulling on fabric, not on pole. One of the rules of stormproofing is, wherever possible, always attach to exoskeleton. In other words, tent framework, not fabric. How can we secure this point, this attachment point, to framework rather than fabric? Simple. Every place fabric passes over a pole, we'll install a Velcro tab behind the storm loop. Here's the Velcro tab. Now this procedure works especially well with dome style tents with their many poles which go everywhere. Now this is just a model, you understand, so this is a very small Velcro tab. On a full-size tent, this would be much more substantial. I'll clip that around the pole, and then when I pull, I am now pulling on framework, not on fabric. In fact, if I was going to be using this tent under super high wind conditions, and by that I mean winds of over about 40 miles an hour, I might even want more of these. I might put in another one up here and another one down here. And naturally, of course, they would be on both sides of the tent. If wind started coming in from this direction, I could run these things out this way. Running another one this way, this would be like a parachute coming straight out. Now the manufacturer of this tent realized this tent blew down in high winds, so the manufacturer thoughtfully provided a D-ring at the top. But there's a problem with this. Even though this D-ring is well reinforced, it violates a major principle of waterproofing. Again, always hook to tent framework rather than fabric. Another rule of stormproofing is, if one line is good, two lines are better. If one stake is good, two stakes are better. I'm going to go up inside the tent now, and I will hook into the framework. I'm going right over the top, right around the little plastic junction tube. Go through here like so. And let's put a couple stakes in the ground so you can see how steady this really is. In a frontal wind, we would want these stakes fairly close together, pulling off the main line. Notice that there are no line tighteners on these guy lines. Instead, we are using a hitch called a power cinch or trucker's hitch to secure this. And this is the hitch that you would want to use with your tent. We'll be learning this hitch later in the video. I'll tighten this one down here, seal it with a quick release half hitch, and I'll do the same thing over here, sealing it with a quick release half hitch. I am now set for a frontal wind. Boy, that tent's solid. If I were to also add these across the side, this tent is not coming down. May the wind be at your back as you explore new places, and may you care enough to preserve the wild and wilderness for all who follow.
Thank you for watching Cliff's Corner. If you would like to see more content by Cliff, please subscribe to my channel. If you would like to purchase the Forgotten Skills video, go to Cliff's website, cliffcanoe.com, or scan this QR code to go directly to Cliff's site. I want to thank Dan Nestor for permission to use his music. Stay tuned for more episodes from Cliff as he shares his tips with how to choose a good tent to help make your camping experience more enjoyable.